Hey guys, it's Sam. Thanks for checking out the video. My pal Sarath is a WWE gear maker. It's what he basically does 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sarath is responsible for some of the iconic gear worn by your favorite superstars like Seth Rollins, like Sami Zayn, the Bloodline, Sasha Banks, and a whole lot more. Get to know Sarath. Find out what life is like as a WWE gear maker. How much input the WWE superstars have into their attire, and a whole lot more here on Notsam Wrestling.
I'm going to start that again, because when you trip on a word within the first 3 words.
I'm excited for this. I just tripped on a word. That's how excited I am, because my pal Sarath is here in studio.
Bro, thank you for having me, man. It's like walking into a collectibles store.
I mean, as somebody, I feel like you share the philosophy where you just want to keep the things that are interesting to you around you at all times.
Yeah.
That's the whole goal, right?
Yeah. I mean, you learn a lot about someone's personality just by looking at their environment around them.
Right.
How clean it is, the things they keep around.
Right.
And like for me, it's always, I'll pull inspiration from anything. So, you could just see, like I see like the Hayabusa on the wall or stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot masks that are like that. And then I log it into my brain.
Oh, that's interesting. So you'll see like, okay, so if at some point in the next few months somebody shows up with a Hayabusa mask, I'm like, you're welcome.
Yeah. There was a time where I want to say I was in either Boston or San Francisco, one of those places. I was at a hotel and I just happened to look, and there was this design on the wall. It was some kind of grid, I forget, but I logged it into my brain, and then next thing you know, I was like, oh yeah, the hexagon from that wall. And I used it on someone's tights just because I remember it just being this like intricate little design that I could then pull off and put into.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, for those that don't know, you are one of a very small number. What is it? 2 people that are.
Well, there's
3?
3 of us. There's 3 of us backstage. Myself, Terry, who's been there since the very beginning.
Didn't she make like Shawn Michaels like WrestleMania 12 gear and stuff like that?
So the position, so that was your sister Julie. So
Gotcha.
The position of seamstress at WWE was created specifically for Terry and her sister.
Wow.
So like literally everything that you've seen from, I want to say 87 on.
So that's around when they go, we need an in-house designer.
So they were making stuff for, I want to say it was like the Rockers. The first set that Julie made was for the Rockers, and then they started ordering from her all the time, and then they started making stuff for the Heart Foundation, Sensational Sherry, and then eventually, they got brought on. I want to say it was Paul Bearer that might have helped them get in there, but yeah, they started working there full time on the road with it, because before that they would just, wherever there was a show, they would travel on their own to the show.
And just like drop off gear that they had worked on.
Drop off gear, fix people's gear, things like that. And then eventually they were brought on.
And the Rockers was the first.
Yeah. So I think Julie was a fan of the Rockers, and she had made tights for them and just brought it to them one day.
Wow.
And they just really liked it, so they kept ordering from her.
Well, but it's not, I mean, the fact that like this position was created for people who one of them is still there today.
I tell her all the time, like I'm an 80s, 90s kid, and everything that I loved about like professional wrestling, like half of that came from her.
It's so crazy because especially that era, like the aesthetic is so important and such that thing that's ingrained into our heads. So the idea that somebody took a needle and thread, like a human being, and like thought of this thing, it's like, what if we did this and sewed it up and said, here you go. Like at some point it was just an idea, and now it's like this weird, like iconic.
Well, that's
thing.
the thing. Like, so whenever I'm like creating tights or trying to come up with designs, like I think about like, can I make something that's as classic or as timeless as, say, Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 12 gear,
right?
Or seeing him come out in chaps, or the mirrors, seeing Rey Mysterio and all his superhero things, like things that are logged in my brain as like, this is what wrestling is to me.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can come up with something like that. Like to this day, one of the coolest things I will ever see in wrestling is watch an LOD walk out with spiked shoulder pads. Like to me, that's wrestling encapsulated in a character.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Especially because it was like bright red with the giant black spikes. And it was like a cartoon come to life. Like, do you think of different materials and stuff? Because that's part of it, right? Is like not only creating this insane visual, but it's like, okay, I need to figure out how to pull up this look with maybe this material or whatever that hasn't been used before. But they've also got to be able to wrestle and be athletic in this outfit.
And well, that's the thing. Like a lot of times, you know, you'll get designs created by other people. People just draw things and say, hey, you know, this person would look really cool in that. Yeah. And a lot of times, a lot of that stuff is really good. If you look on the internet, there's a lot of wrestling fans who will come up with designs. And a lot of it's really good. But the thing they forget is not only does it have to look good, it's got to be functional.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not just functional for that night. You remember, like, I mean, it's a little less nowadays, but back in the day, you had wrestlers wrestling 5 nights a week. So,
of course,
your tights had to last 5 nights a week, every week for months on end.
And the fact that you got your start wrestling, that your background is being a wrestler in a wrestling ring, I would imagine that you have that perspective. Not that they don't, because they've been doing it forever, but like you can walk in and kind of know not just this has to look cool, but you know what it has to do in the ring.
Like for instance, I mean, we just had the show in Saudi Arabia, Crown Jewel, and like one of those things is, you know, we got to create the bodysuits for the girls,
right?
And a lot of them will get stuff designed and they'll start getting it put together, and I look at them like, oh, you're going to be out there in a full vinyl bodysuit. Like, it looks amazing, but like, just remember, we're out in the desert. Like, you're going to be sweating your ass off. Can I cuss?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you're going to be out there sweating your ass off. So like, sometimes I'll look at that situation. I'll be like, okay, how do we achieve that same look, but in materials that are a little more functional so that a person's not sweating or not going like, you know, just getting heat stroke out there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where they could probably try something on, it fits right, they're moving around, okay, this is it, and 5-10 minutes into a match, they're like, oh my god, I didn't take into account what this would do.
So that happened with Logan in SummerSlam against Miz.
Oh yeah.
So like when I made his first set, it was a mix of vinyl and spandex, but we really wanted to give that, like, you know, the leather look, or like that, you know, the baggy pants kind of look, but not really baggy.
Right, that shine.
Yeah, so that second set at SummerSlam, we went like maybe 90% vinyl on there, and he was just sweating like crazy.
And that's only waist down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's sweating like crazy. So like, you know, when we were getting ready for Crown Jewel, they're like, hey, we need more, you know, more breathable material. So I was like, all right, how do I achieve the same look, but with more spandex?
Yeah.
So I went and found like a shinier spandex, something that's going to give, you know, the creasing that makes it look like, you know, pants versus tights.
So you personally, do you like go to a material store and go, yeah, you're like feeling it, this will work, this will be cool, I know I can do something with this?
Sometimes, I mean, like whenever I'm in New York, I'll stop by the Fashion District, go to Spandex World, Spandex House, and just take a look at things. I do have a shop in Orlando that I go to regularly just to see what's there and just see what's around. But a lot of times I order it online. I know the fabrics that I normally use.
Yeah.
And I know if I'm finding that same fabric but a different color, it's generally going to be the same. But then sometimes, you know, sometimes an idea will come and you do it and it construct it and it goes exactly how you thought. But then when they put it on, it just doesn't feel the right way. Like for instance, when I did Stephanie's McMahon's gear for Mania.
It's high pressure gear.
Yeah, so it was when she tagged with Hunter against Kurt and Ronda, and she wanted a bodysuit, and so she had this specific look that she was going for that was modeled after something else, but she had this idea of using the same kind of fabric as Hunter, but Hunter wears thicker fabric.
But he just wears a little bit of the fabric.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, but because he's like muscular, like it doesn't really impact him that way, so it looks fine on him. But with a woman, like with that thicker fabric, sometimes it squeezes them in and flattens them in the wrong spots. So, you know, we tried it on for the first time. This is a week before WrestleMania. She tries it on for the first time and it just doesn't look right. She goes, what do you think we should do? I was like, scrap it. I'm gonna retake your measurements right now, and then when I get to, I think it was New Orleans. When I get to New Orleans,
yes, 34. Yeah.
I am running out, and I'll get this. We'll figure it out. And so I get there, and I'm
a week out.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, you get done with something, you think, okay, this is gonna be good. We're ready to go. I can mark that off the list. And all of a sudden, it's like, no, it's a high pressure situation. You got to figure it out again. So yeah, as soon as I landed, I was at different fabric stores, just finding something that gave the same look, but was thin enough so that it can ride a woman's curves and really accentuate their body type.
Of course, yeah, because you have to. I mean, like you said, it's the aesthetic. You have to. Everybody has to look good. That's what part of what we're selling, right? It's part of the presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you end up in this position? Because that's what I was kind of getting at. This is. It's not like there's a Craigslist ad that opens up and goes like, "Hey, who wants to make gear for every WWE superstar ever?"
Well, so I started making tights back in 2000, 2001 when I first started wrestling. I was a senior in high school training, and I knew like the Hardy Boys were huge then, so I knew Matt made their tights. So I was like, if Matt did it, I could do it. So I took a sewing class in high school. They taught me how to use a machine.
Now, did you tell people when you're taking the sewing class in high school? Did you tell people, well, I just want to learn how to make wrestling gear?
I not really.
But
that was my goal.
That's so great.
And then so then once I hit the indies, I just started, experimenting on myself, making myself new types of tights, biker tights, singlets, all this stuff. And every time I learned to make something new, I would tell people, like, hey, I know how to make this now. So I would, sell it. Obviously, you're not getting paid a lot on the indies, so I'd get to a show and it would help me balance out my expenses.
Yeah.
So if I'm only getting $50 for a show, but I could sell $400 worth of tights,
right?
Cool. It helps me out. Just covering costs. And then when Mercedes got signed in 2012, I quit my job at the ice cream factory, moved to Florida, had no job, just trying to figure things out. But I was always making her tights, and I let it be known that, to the wrestlers, like, hey, I know how to make tights and stuff like that. So I think the first guy that ordered from me was Percy Watson.
Yeah.
So I made something for Percy, then I made something for Mojo.
Percy Watson, by the way, I mean, his aesthetic is important too. This is a guy who figured out how to wrestle in glasses.
Yeah.
A lot of people came to the ring with glasses on. A lot of people didn't wrestle in the glasses.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. So it's fun. I have this, it's a funny Percy Watson story because so I'd made him a couple pairs of tights and I was making him like a boxing robe one day. And I'm looking at it and I'm just like, there's something wrong with this writing. I'm just trying to figure it out. And I'm looking, I'm like, because it's always said Showtime on the back. And I'm looking, I'm like, it was in cursive. I'm like, that doesn't say Showtime. That says Showtime with an N. And I was like, yeah. I was like, hey man, like, all your writing says Showtime, not time, like
because there's the extra swoosh in cursive,
yes.
the extra.
Yeah. So I'm telling him like, because I've just been copying his stuff over again, so I didn't really think about it. And then I was like, oh, he goes, oh really? Holy crap! I was like, hey, do you want me to switch it? He goes, no, you can just leave it. So I was like, all right. So then maybe like a week later, Sticks, one of the refs, he goes, yo, Sarath messed up on Percy's robe. It says Showtime. He was like, no, Percy knows about it. He told me to leave it. So I was like, all right, but yeah.
No, I'll be Showtime. It's taken me this far. I'm gonna start being Showtime.
Yeah, I was just like, I was like, I told him before it was even made. So I could have easily switched it.
So when he was on the NXT reality show, was he wearing Showtime gear?
You might have to look back. I gotta go back and look.
I'm 100% looking back now to find out if he was Showtime.
Yeah, look at that. Look at when they were doing. I want to say it was when NXT was first kicking off. When right after the Shield left.
Sure.
Around that time, you might be able to take a look and see.
Oh my.
Yeah, 2012, 13. Yeah.
That's so great. So after. Which is good because you couldn't have had that on your reputation. You're just starting, like, this is your first.
Yeah.
This is your first guy who's using you.
Well, it's not just that, but like I had already made him like 2 pairs, just copying over what was already made for him. So then when I caught it, I was like, oh man, like people are going to think I made all his tights and they all say Showtime.
You have to go back to the ice cream factory. What were you doing in the ice cream factory? Were you actually making ice cream? Were you packaging ice cream?
So I worked at the Friendly's Ice Cream Company up in Massachusetts. And so I started on the line, the packaging line and that, but like I got to the point where I was the guy that was on the tanks flavoring all the ice cream, sending it over to the freezers.
Oh, sick.
So between maybe 2004 to 2012, if you had Friendly's ice cream either bought in store or at a restaurant, there's probably like a 1 in 6 chance that I was the guy
that's big.
making all the flavors.
That's huge. That's big. And it's especially tough, and it speaks to your discipline that you're able to be an independent wrestler and work in a Friendly's ice cream factory, because most independent wrestlers would get too fat on free ice cream.
Well, like, I mean,
unless you were a big fat independent wrestler.
First of all, I love I love ice cream, so yeah, I wasn't in the best shape. I got better at it. Just being on the tanks and stuff, I'm working all the time, so I was very active. But like being at the ice cream factory taught me a lot of discipline, especially with wrestling, because my schedule would be I'd work third shift Sunday night through Thursday night, get out of work Friday morning at 7 a.m., sleep until 10 a.m., shower, drive to wherever I had to wrestle, leave right after my match and fly back home because I was working overtime. I'd get back at 11, 12 o'clock at night, work all night, get out at 7 in the morning, do the same thing on Sunday, and then Monday morning, after I got out of work, I'd crash for 10 hours.
But you know what? It's like people go, how do you make a living just doing what you're passionate about in the beginning, like being a wrestler? And the answer is learn how to make gear and work in an ice cream factory, and then you'll be able to wrestle for a living.
And then pull that schedule for damn near 10 years.
Right.
It's a grind.
Yeah.
So like some people will see the fact that I work for WWE and then I do all these different things, like it doesn't look like it's overnight success, but you don't see the grind that went on behind it.
Of course. Of course. And were you making Sasha Banks, obviously, were you making her gear when she got to NXT?
I pretty much started. I met her when she first started Chaotic Wrestling,
right?
And I've pretty much made her everything, like from her first set,
all the way on. So that was your beat. You were doing Percy Watson and Sasha Banks
in NXT. Yes, Percy Watson, Mojo. At one point,
Mojo.
Yeah, before I started working with the main roster, I got to the point where I was doing.
That's a lot of bright colors, by the way. Percy, Mojo, and Sasha Banks. Those are all like the bright, lots of yellows, lots of bright reds, pinks, and purples.
Yeah, I got to the point where I was doing about 30% of that roster.
Wow.
And then 2015, I think Mark Carano and Hunter pulled me aside and said, hey, we need help with WrestleMania this year. If you want to come in for 2 months to help us out, and maybe have a good experience, go to WrestleMania. I said, cool, let's try this out.
Awesome, yeah. And which WrestleMania was that?
32. It was
Dallas?
No, I'm sorry, 31. It was Santa Clara.
Gotcha. Okay, 31. Yeah. WrestleMania push play.
Yeah.
It's the big push play button, yeah.
Terminator Hunter.
Yeah.
So I went in for 2 months, helped out with that, and after the 2 months, like, we like you. We want to sign you on for a year. If you want to come, work for us. I was like, all right, cool. Let's give this a try. I've been wrestling for 15 years.
That's wild, because wasn't that Mercedes' first WrestleMania too?
No, she didn't wrestle.
Oh, that was Dallas.
She was still on NXT at the time. But so I just hopped on for a year, and then 6 months into that, we're like, hey, we want to extend you 3 years. And so I've been extended since. So I've been there from February 2015 till now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Do you have is there any gear specifically that is like, that's my thing? After all these years, you've been searching for that like iconic piece that you can make. Is there anything that you're like super, super proud of that people recognize all the time?
Let's see, proud. There's a lot of different pieces that like just have a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
I mean, you got like Sasha with the Sailor Moon gear.
Mm-hmm.
It's so many more than I can think of. Seth Rollins in the Rey Mysterio gear. Things like that. Like
when love you, Rollins Rey Mysterio gear.
When you can reach back into that and like the nostalgia and pull it out of people and give them a memory.
Yeah.
Like that's what's cool to me. But like also making something that's recognizable to a person. Like for instance, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but I think nowadays if you see anyone with crisscross straps around the arm, you automatically think, oh, that's probably inspired by Sasha.
Right.
And like just knowing that that's something I came up with is like, all right, that's cool.
That's sick.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Seth must be just a blast
he's
to do stuff for. I mean, even because Seth like is one of those guys who's got so many iconic sets of gear. It seems so fun.
He lets me just do my thing sometimes.
Yeah.
And like sometimes he'll have an idea that he wants to go by, and then sometimes he's just like, hey, like, maybe use this color, but he'll just let me, go balls to the wall with whatever I want. Like when we were doing Clash at the Castle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, we're in Wales. So I walked him like, hey, Wales, Rocket Man. He goes, all right, I like where you're going with it.
Yes.
And then like a week later, he just sends me that picture of Taron Egerton in Rocket Man in the outfit. I'm like, all right, cool.
Let's
go.
That's it. And it was perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfect. Especially this year, I feel like. Even though Seth, like, the all-white SummerSlam gear is iconic, Rey Mysterio gear is iconic, but, like,
this year, having that Clash at the Castle gear, having the Dusty gear at Hell in a Cell, that was awesome.
I was actually talking to Cody about the Dusty gear because like Seth had brought up the idea of doing the polka dots, and like he talked about it with Cody and things like that, and like I think Cody had the assumption that we were gonna Seth that up. So, you know, when I was talking with Jolene, who makes Seth's kick pads, we were just sitting there chatting, and we were thinking like, okay, what should we do? And I was like, oh, maybe we'll do black lace with the polka dots and stuff like that. And we were thinking about really like going Seth Rollins with it. Then I sat there and I was like, no, I think it'd be better if we stick to like how it originally looked.
Yeah.
So I went and just found like, you know, football spandex, really, you know, a matte black that doesn't have too much shine to it, a matte yellow, and just went super 80s. Just, it looks simple, but you get the feel, the emotion behind it way more than if we did a bedazzled Seth Rollins look that's inspired by Dusty.
Yeah. Even the tank top, I thought, the entrance tank top, how it was kind of baggy.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a singlet top.
Yeah. Because we were going to do like the top where he zips up like his normal stuff. And I was like, you know what? Nah, like Dusty had the tank top. So let's do a loose tank top.
Yeah.
And just, go that route.
So the fact that went so well, did that then inspire to go to Extreme Rules? Because when you did the RVD gear, it was like, again, it was kind of, there were Seth elements to it.
Yeah.
But it was more RVD than Seth.
Well, that's the thing. Like with that, you know, we were talking about, because Seth didn't really know what he wanted to do for, you know, the pay-per-view. So I was sitting there talking with him. I was like, you know what? It's Extreme Rules in Philly. Like, you have Riddle and Riddle's, you know, extracurricular activities.
Sure.
So I said, you know,
hitting the bongos.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Let's do RVD. And he goes, yeah, I'm with that, because, you know, RVD was an inspiration for him too.
Sure.
So being able to pay homage, but then have his own little twist to it.
Yeah.
So I found an airbrusher in Orlando and he helped me out with it. And then once we got everything done, I was like, all right, let me take that and add some sparkle to it. So it gives it that Seth element.
Yes.
So yeah, it's really fun to be able to play with inspiration and ideas like that, and having someone who's, you know, ready and willing to be like, all right, let's go.
We're coming right off Survivor Series as we're having this conversation. It was yesterday.
Yeah.
Was there anything last night that you're specifically like, that was the one?
It's weird. So like, my mind is still like, I'm still exhausted from it. Because I mean, not only did we have Survivor Series, like it was 2 days after Thanksgiving. We just had Crown Jewel a couple of weeks ago. So like, you know, sometimes you think these guys have like a couple months to put these outfits and looks together, but like realistically, I was working on Crown Jewel stuff up until after that pay-per-view. Right. Then as soon as that's done, I have to hop on Survivor Series stuff. But, you know, I have a family too. I have a life, so I got to do the holidays. So, so I made it known to myself that like, hey, you're probably going to be working your butt off at certain points so that you can enjoy the time with the family when you want to.
Other points, yeah.
So last night, like, I would say Friday night and yesterday, I was just head down sewing. I didn't finish gear until 7:00
PM.
An hour before.
So as the pre-show's coming on, the gear is getting finished.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. One of my favorite things, like, so I was working on Finn at the time, just because I knew what I wanted to do for him, but like I knew in my head I had an idea of how long it would take me, so I was like, all right, I could push his.
That's pretty convenient that you've been doing it long enough that you know. I know this is how long this is going to take, and he had those. He had some Mosh shoes on, right?
The Jordan ones.
Yeah,
the black and purple Jordan ones.
So you had the color scheme.
Yeah, so we had the color scheme. So I went and looked for different textures. So I found like that carbon fiber purple, and like the crocodile print spandex.
Yes.
So we did that with like a matte pleather and some shiny vinyl, just to give it a little dimension. So that worked out, and Seth loved it. I mean, not Seth. I'm sorry, Finn loved it.
Yeah.
The Bloodline, I did all the red for the Bloodline.
Sammy's too?
Yeah.
I noticed immediately. I noticed in the promo segment.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fire that Sami has red pants on tonight. Yeah.
We'll notice that there was one member of the Bloodline who wasn't in red, and that's not because it wasn't made, but because, you know, the fabric texture wasn't what he thought it was going to be.
Right.
So he'd put it on to just see how it felt on him. But at the end of the day, like, he's a tribal chief. He gets to do whatever he wants.
Oh yeah.
So at the on the one,
y'all are wearing red for me.
exactly.
Wear your red.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, at the end of the day, it would be cool if they were all dressed in red, but at the same time, like, no, he does his thing and you're following him.
Yeah.
So,
it works. And that's it's interesting too. And again, I'm sure it helps that you come from wrestling, that you have that brain for it where you're like, we're telling stories.
Yeah.
With this attire. Like the attire is part of the storytelling that goes into it, where if like Jey Uso wasn't wearing red, it'd be like, why is he not? This is weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so like one of the small details is something like, so I've been working on Sami stuff for a little while. And, when he transitioned into the storyline with the Bloodline, we had talked about putting honorary on his tights, getting the shirt. And like, for whatever reason, things didn't, progress as quickly as we wanted them to, as far as the gear. And then all of a sudden that moment comes where Roman bestows the shirt on him. And I was telling him, like, yeah, like if we had put honorary on your pants when you wanted to, then you wouldn't have gotten that emotional beat that we got then, because now Roman's bestowing you with that honorary name.
Right. And it's Roman, ultimately it's Roman's call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when we when we were doing his tights, especially for last night, like I modeled his stuff closer to Roman's than it was the Usos, because we almost made an honorary version that was closer to what the Usos are wearing with the black on the legs and things like that and the trimming. But in my head, it's like, no, like you're trying to follow Roman, so your look is gonna look more like his, and like the honorary on there is gonna be more pronounced in the front versus the Usos in the back. And there was a couple other beats where like, it's just, if we had done it ahead of time, I don't think it would hit the same exact way as it does now in the story.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is not something that's like talked about with anyone else. It's just something that like, we just try to keep in mind when we're trying to create these outfits, is like, okay, we're still telling a story, and anything we can do to help assist in that, maybe it's whether it's subconsciously or not. People can go and look back and be like, oh, now I see that little detail that I didn't notice before.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I had Bianca Belair on the podcast last week, and one of the things that we talked about was her not only making her own gear, but the pace that she was under leading into War Games, but like creating her own gear before Crown Jewel. And she was in, I think, Mexico right before, and she's like on the bus and on the plane, like sewing.
And she had her sewing machine in her luggage going to Saudi. And I was like, hey, if you're going to do that, like, just remember like and this is something that a lot of people don't think about is, the wattage in the outlets over there. Before I used to go over there, I used to bring all my equipment with me.
Yeah.
And one day I completely fried my sewing machine.
Because the wattage is different.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there like, okay, show's coming up in 2 days and my stuff is fried. So I had to go and like look up a sewing machine store, and I went out in Jeddah, found a sewing machine, took it back to the hotel, and just went to work.
So, because no excuses, right?
Yeah.
You're not showing up without the product.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the show's got to go. The show's going to go on whether you're ready or not.
Right.
So you do whatever you can to make sure your part in it is taken care of.
What do you think? Is there a set of gear that is more elaborate than people even realize? Like, is there or maybe people realize it and you're still just like, yeah, like the most elaborate.
I mean, I feel like Sasha stuff is probably the most elaborate because it's in layers.
Yes.
Like you got to do it in specific layers.
So many
like,
pieces.
Yeah, you do certain pieces. Then okay, you have to do a fitting because I got to get this part marked. I got to get this part marked. Come back, do another fitting, and it's like, when you see a logo on someone's tights, there's two ways you can do it. You can use a vinyl cutter, and you can just take the vinyl cutter off, heat press it, sew around the edge, put it on the pair of tights, and you're ready to go. But then for a lot of us who like, I like doing it old school. Mm-hmm. So like with something like that, I have my patterns and I'm sketching out or I'm tracing out every layer, cutting it out of the specific fabric that I need, which it's 100 times harder and way more time consuming. But I think you get more dimension in the logo in that way.
Yeah.
So like that way you can actually have all the colors matching up and things like that the way you really want them to.
What's it like for you when like Mattel puts out a figure in gear that is that sort of like high concept gear for you, right? Like over there, I have Seth in his Rey Mysterio outfit figure. Like yesterday, I pre-ordered the Logan Paul Ultimate that they did, but like clearly, they realized that the gear is such a hit that we need to spend a lot of time getting the detail right on our figures to match the gear, because that's what the collectors and the kids that buy these want.
Yeah.
Do you get off on that, or are you not an action figure guy?
Oh, I love action figures, but I think for me, it's less about the detail of it and more like if I see a figure with gear on that out in the wild, you know, it's like someone will send me a picture and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But if I'm at the store, and I'm walking down, like one day I was in the store and I was walking around and I saw the Seth Rollins Chicago Bears one, and I was like, so I immediately picked it up and had him sign it. And like, if I really should collect all the figures with gear that I've made, but I just don't have the room for it all.
Right.
But I really should just, you know, collect them all and at some point put them all up. But.
Yeah, put them in a bin or something. But it's really more that sort of feeling of seeing it on a shelf and going like, oh my God, like this is.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like when I was a kid, you know, like wrestling figures were like the thing. Like, that's like I used to collect them when I was little, play with them all the time, and just knowing that like something I made transitioned into a figure or a doll. Like we had the Sasha WrestleMania 33, I think Orlando, the half black, half white with the gold. Mm-hmm. I remember that gear and I really loved that gear. And then one day we went and took a tour of Mattel and they showed us when they were doing the Barbie doll figure ones.
Oh, yeah.
And they had that figure in that gear. And I was just like, man, like little girls are going to play with a doll that's dressed up in something I made.
It's wild.
And it's just, I just had to put myself in the mindset of a child. Like, you know, this is, I get to undress my doll and do this with my doll and do all this. And I'm like, I had a hand in, you know, creating that emotional moment.
Have you done anything with Pat McAfee, or is he really just showing up in a tank top and shorts?
So, I mean, at Mania what was the last one? Dallas?
Yes.
Yeah. At there, Terry actually, like, he had brought his stuff and he goes, hey, is there anything you can help me do to help me make it a little more WrestleMania? So we just used like jet black Swarovski crystals and really just gave it some sparkle. Because at the end of the day, you can come up with the most elaborate wrestling-y like outfit for someone, but if it betrays the character,
right,
then you're kind of like, now you're just playing wrestler. You're just playing dress up.
Right.
So you wanted to keep that same feel that Pat has, but just, you know, add a little pizzazz to it.
Right. Amp it up just a little bit. And Swarovski crystals will do that. Are those like the hidden trick in your tackle box? Like you must be an investor in the company by this point with the amount of crystals.
I have like containers and containers full of crystals at home. It's just, I actually was able to go do a tour of the Swarovski headquarters in Manhattan one day. I don't know if it's the headquarters, but their offices in Manhattan.
Sure.
And just seeing some of the stuff they had. And I'm just like, oh, there's a lot more out there that I can play with. I just haven't had a chance to play with yet. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, there's, you know, not only is it like, you're not only just going for the look, but again, it has to be cost effective for the talent that are paying for their gear, and it's got to be durable. So sometimes they have these little pyramid crystals that like they look like spikes. You know, they would look great on a jacket, but you know, buying up 2,000 of those to put on a jacket, it's gonna be cost a pretty penny.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just not gonna get talent who wanna invest that much money into just one jacket.
Right.
Especially knowing that, you know, I'm gonna go to the ring, I'm just gonna rip it off and toss it down because I want to get this emotional beat out. Then when I come back, all those crystals are broken, and it's just like.
Yeah, I think there was one WrestleMania where Fandango spent a ton of money on gear and then found out he wasn't getting an entrance. And it was like, no.
Well, I mean, it's so funny because like sometimes you try to coordinate, you know, like the gear with the figures and stuff like that. I remember AJ was doing a blue color rush set of gear, and it was supposed to be when he was working Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. So they had coordinated it with like action figures and stuff like that, like when he was going to have the match, and then the next day the figures are going to be in store and all that stuff, and then plans change, and then a week before he loses to Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan wrestles Brock. So now AJ's not even on Survivor Series, and they're like, oh, well, we had all these plans. What's going on?
Yeah.
So it's little things like that.
Do you stress out if there's a wardrobe malfunction, if something, you know, tears or rips in a match?
I mean, sometimes like in a match, there's nothing you can do. Like, and,
But do you know the difference if like, because you're right, like in a match anything's gonna tear, but then there are some tears where it's like, oh, that was because of craftsmanship. Not that that's ever happened to you, but
well, I mean, I know AJ was complaining to me one time, not necessarily complaining, but he was like, everybody on the internet says I had a wardrobe malfunction because I tore the hole in my ass.
I remember.
He goes, but that's not a wardrobe malfunction. That's a hole that ripped in the match. Like, it's not on the seam.
right. So it's not like the wardrobe malfunction. It's a battle scar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, like, there's sometimes, I mean, there's always that what was it, Zack Ryder, when he was working the guy and the trunks got pulled.
Oh, that was what's his name?
Rory
Fox.
Fox. Yeah.
Rapid delivery Rory Fox.
Yeah.
Yep. Who old Zack Ryder did the old tear ski. Broski did the tear ski. And he ripped his tights because they were like, I guess the seam was in the bottom.
Yeah.
And they just completely tore, and he had no underwear or anything. He's nude in the ring.
Yeah. I mean, it happens sometimes. I mean, like,
You
again,
didn't make those tights though.
No. I mean, but then again, like, it's these guys are wrestling in their gear, sometimes multiple times a weekend for months on end. Like, it's wear and tear. Eventually, stuff is gonna go.
Something's gonna
happen. The key is, how long is it gonna last? Because I've seen stuff made by people where guys will try it on before they've even had a match, and I'm already seeing seams popping. So I'm like, okay, that's just a craftsmanship thing. Like, hey, maybe they shouldn't use straight stitches on something that's supposed to stretch.
Yeah.
Like
How
that.
far into it did you like feel like you had an expertise where you would know something like that?
I don't know. Like, I think it's just something you just recognize over time. Even nowadays, I still think I'm kind of a dunce when it comes to some of the stuff I do, because every day, like, some people just have certain different techniques that they go by.
Yeah.
I mean, I started working there in 2015, and I was talking to Terry and Julie at the time, and they had a completely different technique for covering a bra than I did. So I was watching them. I'm like, oh, I've never seen it done that way before. And then likewise, I'm working on one, and they're looking at me like, oh, I've never seen it done that way before. So,
Right.
For someone like them who's been doing it for 30 some odd years,
Yeah.
there's still techniques out there that, they can then learn.
Yeah.
So
Such an awesome thing, man.
Yeah.
Such an awesome thing. You also have a podcast out there for people who want to get to know you beyond the gear.
Yeah. It's
About movies.
Yeah, it's Sarath and Chris's Movie Therapy Podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify. I need to get it on Apple Music and Google, but it should be out there.
But the YouTube's out, so if anybody's watching this,
Yeah, just go to SC Movie Therapy Podcast.
Yeah.
And you'll see us. We're probably about 7 episodes in on, officially, but I think we have about 45 episodes in the can. Like, we've literally been filming and recording for over a year just to get the bugs out and figure out how we're going to do this all. And so we have all these episodes in the can that we'll release, episodically, but every so often when a new movie comes out,
sure,
we'll interject those in there. Like, we just released our episode for Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Did you guys see Terrifier 2?
what movie?
Terrifier 2?
No, but that sounds like it's right up my alley. What is that?
You like horror movies?
Yeah, I love horror movies.
You like violence? Like I mean like a lot of violence.
I'm not a gratuitous gore kind of person.
I mean, it's gratuitous.
Yeah, I'm more of a Halloween one, like Imply.
Oh yeah, no, there is no implication. It's very literal. Like, let's watch this arm break.
But is it okay? So is it gore just for the sake of gore,
Well,
or is it?
That's a good question. No, no. They added in a ton of story. Terrifier 1 is a lot of gore. That's just gore.
Okay.
But Terrifier 2, which I still love, but Terrifier 2, like, they added in a lot of fantasy elements. They added in a huge story behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in your guys.
I'll take a look at that. I
Take
love.
on
Is that out on streaming?
Yeah, actually, it just came out on like Apple and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look, because like our bread and butter, like, again, we do movies that are released in theaters and stuff like that, but our bread and butter is like these deep cut, movies that you find on streaming that people might not know about.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea is we'll watch a movie and we'll talk about them. We'll talk about the movie, but more than anything, we just use it as a vehicle to then, analyze our own lives and take lessons from the movies and apply it to us. Because at the end of the day, we feel like a lot of times guys don't talk out their feelings.
Right.
So if we can use this movie as a way of just mining, our thoughts and figuring out like, hey, what makes us tick, or how do we feel about a certain situation? What if we were in it, and really they're just getting our emotions out? Then it's good for the both of us. And I know for a fact that ever since talking to him, my co-host, on a regular basis, like I just feel a little more relaxed on an everyday basis.
Lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, man. I absolutely love that. Now, do you take movie inspiration and bring it into gear a lot?
Yeah. So like a lot of times, because I mean, a lot of people are just, these are the things that they're fans of.
Yeah.
Like, so if they want to, sometimes they want to take these things that have an emotional connection to, and just, transition it into their gear. The big key with that is, IP. You can't,
Of course.
A lot of times some people will do something that's so literal that like it looks great and the audience will love it, but then you can't use that footage. You can't make figures out of it because you're impeaching on IP.
It has to be inspired by.
Yeah. So the key is, taking something but then really making it your own, so that they then can use it for, a bunch of different things. Like for, say, Sasha's Wonder Woman gear.
Right.
It's not so literal that it impeaches on any IP.
Right.
That's why they were able to make an action figure out of it.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. It makes total sense. Do you ever see a wrestler that's maybe not in WWE that you're watching on TV or at a show or whatever, and go like, man, if I could get my hands on that, here's what I would do?
I've seen some. I don't know if I can pull any out of my brain at the moment, but I know there's like wrestlers I've seen that, like, if I had the chance and if I had the time, I'd love to take a crack. Like,
Okay, all right.
like Danhausen. Danhausen's an awesome character.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
Love him to death.
Yeah.
And like, I think I could do some really fun stuff with his gear. It's just a matter of I don't have the time to, nor can I.
Right.
But if I could,
If the opportunity arose.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is the last question.
All right.
Let's say, I've been known to get heat from a time or two in this in this crazy old world. Let's say things got rough, things
Yeah.
got bad,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
were like, "Okay, Sam, like we're bringing you in, we're going full Michael Cole. You've
Yeah.
got a WrestleMania match. Like somebody's just gonna beat the shit out of you because people
Yeah. need
need to see it," which isn't that far out of the realm of possibility. I think people
Yeah,
would
yeah, yeah.
pay to see me get beat up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come to you and go, "Look, I do not have a body built for this.
Yeah.
I have no idea what to wear to the ring."
Yeah.
Dude, how do you dress the last professional broadcaster for a WrestleMania match?
All right. So
And I'm good with anything. I want to go wrestling gear.
okay. Well, so here's the thing. Like, okay, you can do a bunch of different. You can go in a bunch of different directions. So, for instance, say like Johnny Knoxville, he went in more of a historically inspired set of gear. So he went more like Andy Kaufman,
Right.
Because that's his character kind of, they spoke to each other. So when you see that, you're like, oh yeah, Johnny Knoxville would definitely be dressed like that. I was actually trying to talk him into possibly doing like a Nacho Libre-ish kind of thing.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I think for you, it'd be all a matter if you were going for comedy, seriousness, whatever. Like, so if you were going for comedy, I'd set you up in something that looks like you're putting on like football pads.
Okay.
But just something that looks like, the most padded up,
Sure,
just
sure.
protecting yourself as much as possible. Whatever
Sure.
the look is, I'm not sure. I'd go for something that's a little more blue collar, so something that looks more like an old school Sports Illustrated sweatshirt kind of look.
Okay.
But just extra pads.
But
under there.
clearly there's pads
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah, like Ahmed Johnson, just pads on the thighs,
yeah,
knees,
thigh, knee
calves,
pads and everything.
everywhere.
Yeah.
But then like if you really wanted to go like depending on what your character was,
Right.
almost dress you up in like an Iron Man armor, but just stuff that's you're able to actually like bump in.
Right.
You know?
Right. Like foam or something.
But for me, the whole idea for you is, okay, he's not a professional, so you want to pad him up as much as possible so that he can theoretically last in the ring longer than 6 minutes.
That's so smart, because then it also protects the whole business, where it's
Yeah.
like, well, how the hell would this idiot? He should be dead in 15 seconds. And it's
Exactly.
Like, well, he's got all this padding and some kind of helmet on, and
Exactly. So
Yeah.
then you look at it, you're like, okay, so theoretically he could last in there a little bit. And then obviously you tell the story in the ring that stretches the match out for the amount of time you need.
Beautiful.
But, the outfit will play a part in making it believable.
you're a genius.
I
You are an aesthetic wrestling gear genius, and I'm glad we got to pick your brain a little bit. I'm sure because I feel like wrestling nerds, like gear is so important. So I'm sure people will have even more questions. So you'll probably have to come back and
Oh, dude, anytime you want
And
me
answer
back,
all
like
those.
first of all, you're in the Northeast, which is home for me.
Awesome.
Like this whole area that you're in, that was my, my home as far as when I was on the Indies, the whole, tri-state area, Northeast. So just being back in the area is fun for me. So anytime I can come back to the studio, like
Awesome.
I am here.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you. And yeah, man, we'll talk soon.
Hell yeah.